Hey everyone, welcome back to the Daily Tri. My name's Travis. Thank you for joining me for another Triathlon Weekly News Roundup where we take a look at everything hot off the triathlon press. And we're going to jump straight in this week to the headlines. And starting us off, we're going to take a look at how Joe Skipper is going to Nice to win the World Champs and put his name in history. From there, we're taking a look at how Gustav is now on the start list for racing the SUPERLEAGUE Arena Games in London, along with one other big name. And then on the subject of Gustav, we'll see how himself and Christian foresee themselves spending their 50s. We move on from them to Lucy, where she was in a cast recently, and do we have a hint at what her race schedule is going to be like? And speaking of race schedules, we have quite a few mystery pro racers who have still yet to announce where they're going to kick off their season. We'll take a closer look at that. From there, we've got Sam Long and Dan Plews revealing all on a How They Train podcast, which clears the air from a lot of the controversy that was surrounding this interesting coaching partnership, and we'll highlight some of what is said on that podcast. But before all that, we're going to go to the results from Ironman Lanzarote and the Challenge Puerto Varas, as well as a couple others. And then we'll also be taking a look at the upcoming races, as always, besides Oceanside, which we will do far more in depth coming up, before finally finishing off with Challenge's new distance, a 76.5 kilometer race. Is this one for the future? So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're going to do our best to get through this as quickly as possible. Don't forget to subscribe. The goal is to get to 10,000 subscribers within the next few months. I think we can make it happen. Big things for this channel coming up. So appreciate all of you. Let's get started. And actually, we're going to dive into Gustav shoes before we do anything. So last week, I mentioned that Gustav shoes after the race in Abu Dhabi were protested against, and we'd have to wait and see what came of that. And a few of you guys were actually ahead of me on this one, and you knew that it was the Norwegian Federation who put in the protest against his shoes. But it seems like this was done on purpose, perhaps to get the shoes on the approved shoe list. And I do have the approved shoe list here, and they are listed on there. And the protest was dismissed by World Athletics. They were totally fine and legal. However, what is confusing to me, and I saw in an article on Triathlete as well, is that the shoes aren't available to the public, and that they are supposed to be, according to the rules, 1 month prior to wearing them in a race. And what's confusing to me as well is that the shoes aren't even in the developing stage, which is the one loophole around getting past that rule, where they can be in a development for a certain amount of time. So very interesting, very confusing to me. I don't know how they got away with that one, and we should, I'm guessing, be on the lookout for these On Cloud One tri shoes that he wore. They looked very interesting. I've never seen a pair of shoes like that. So if you got more information, let us know down below. All right, this weekend there were two epic races that took place on the long distance side of things. We had Challenge Puerto Varas in Chile, where it was Tom Bishop again, making his name even bigger and pushing himself into the top 30 PTO rankings with another outstanding bike performance where he biked, I believe, 8 minutes into Matt Hansen, held on with a good enough run to take the win by almost 6 minutes. And Matt Hansen did have a trademark blistering run on that course, but still, I don't think he'll be happy with how far back he was from that #1 spot. Not a bad start to the season, but Tom Bishop is really having one of the best starts to a season we've seen in a while. And then on the women's side, speaking of amazing starts to a season, it was Lucy Byram who took another win and also pushed her name into the top 30 for the PTO rankings. She dominated the race, and it was Haley Chura in second place there. And then over to Ironman 70.3 Lanzarote, and on the women's side, it was all about Anne Haug, who ran an incredibly fast 1:16 on an extremely hard run course, and it was supposed to be a really hard, windy day as well. And not only did she have the fastest run split, but she outran 81% of the males and 84% of the females by 10 minutes plus. That is just absolutely insane. She won by a large margin, even over India Lee, who's not a bad racer at all. And then on the men's race, the field included the likes of Daniel Bækkegård, Justice Nieslag, and Thor Bendix Madsen, and it was Justice Nieslag who was a class apart on the swim, bike, and run. and just managed to hold on in what seemed like a really hard-fought victory. This is his second win in 2 years over the 70.3 distance, so he is only ranked 183rd in the world right now. But with a performance like that and with the times that he put down, I think he really is one to keep an eye on as well this year, as he's transitioned up from the short course. And we might see him challenging the best at this middle distance racing. Daniel Bækkegård, who is basically a local on the island as he trains there and calls it his second home, will not be happy with his 5th place. We're awaiting his thoughts on the race. Maybe the transatlantic flight from Clash Miami was just a little too much for him. Overall, really wish that one was broadcast. It seemed like a fantastic race. I would love to have watched Anne Howe run. That seemed insane, and on the men's race, it looked super close. So hopefully, as the years go by, we can get more and more broadcasts to all these races. All right, and on to the main news of the week, and that is that Joe Skipper went on record on his latest YouTube video to say that the Ironman World Championships is 100% his focus, and that he is going to try and put his name in history by winning them, and that this is his best chance to do so. He originally wanted to do the PTO 100K distances, but lately hasn't been feeling motivated by the distance, and that he got into triathlon to do the long distance. So he's now probably going to skip the events and put all his eggs in that basket for September 10th. He's also got the Challenge Roth coming up, but first he's got the World Long Distance Championships the same day as PTO Ibiza, where it's a race distance that he said he hoped PTO would do, with a 3K swim, a 120K bike, and a 30K run. So fascinating stuff coming out from Joe Skipper. It definitely does seem like a course that would suit him perfectly, and at the same time of year where he produced a phenomenal result at Ironman Wales. Let me know what you guys think down below. Is this Joe Skipper's year? If he puts all his eggs in his basket and does that 8-week training block that he's talking about doing going into the race, does he stand a good chance of winning? And what will he have to do to become the world #1? And another reason why it might be his year to do it is he'll probably not have to race those pesky Norwegians, as they are focused on short course. And speaking of that, well, you've got Gustav going even shorter coming up in a couple weeks when he races the SUPERLEAGUE Arena Games final in London. It was announced just today that himself and Johnny Brownlee are confirmed on the start list for the race, which to me is fantastic. Adds some superstar names to that race. I've been loving the SUPERLEAGUE races so far, and I'm glad we've got one final one for us in store, where we'll not only see Gustav versus the best in the business with Jonathan Brownlee, who has lots of experience, but we'll also be watching the showdown for who wins the SUPERLEAGUE Arena Games this year, with the likes of Henry Skuman, Chase McQueen, and others competing for that #1 spot. So definitely one we all can't miss coming up soon. But more on Gustav as he and Christian Blumenfeld were featured in a short Zwift documentary, giving us some behind the scenes into their training, but also some insights into their personality differences as they were asked what they would be doing when they're 50 years old. I thought the difference in their responses were hilarious and worth sharing.
I'm done with triathlon, definitely professionally. Hopefully have a nice family, have a house in Bergen and a house somewhere warmer, and living life.
I guess yeah. I'm in altitude preparing for the age group 50 to 54 and yeah, youngest one in my category, feeling sharp.
Are you guys just training for a certain goal and once you're done you will be finished with triathlon, or are you going to be competing into the 70 and 74 age group when you're older? I think I know where I stand now, but before I think I leant more on the other side. So I'm curious to hear what you guys are down below. All right, and then we're on to Lucy Charles Barkley, another superstar, who shared with us in her latest video how she was placed in a cast on both her arms to get another molding for her front end aero bar position. I thought that was fascinating to see the behind the scenes of how that's done and all the testing they were doing to make sure she's as fast as possible on her bike. And at the end of the video, in a sock giveaway, she was having the YouTube following comment where they want to see her race next, but preluding that, she said she had a lot of people wanting her to race in Challenge Roth, and just the way she said it, it made it seem like that was going to happen.
We have seen the most epic start list released for Challenge Roth this year.
We haven't heard anything official from her yet, so it looks like we're gonna hear something soon. I think that would make Challenge Roth truly another world championship for us to watch, especially on the women's side. If you've forgotten, take a look at this start list one more time and add Lucy Charles's name to there. That would be insane. Speaking of race schedules, there's quite a few mystery racers out there who haven't revealed to us when their first race is gonna be. And there's a few who have just popped up and let us know. So we're going to take a closer look at that. But for me, I wanted to start off on the women's side, where Taylor Knibb, Flora Duffy, and Daniela Ryf are three of the biggest names that stand out to me, and we're not quite sure when they're going to start their season off. I know Taylor Knibb and Flora Duffy have been nursing some injuries, but my intuition tells me that they are probably really close to announcing their first race of the season. And Daniela Ryf has said that she would love for PTO Ibiza to be the start race of her season, but it's not yet confirmed. I think it would be pretty epic if all three of those girls lined up at PTO Ibiza. That would be one heck of a race. But we've also got a few names such as Sarah True, Luisa Baptista, Sky Monch, and Lisa Norden, who haven't appeared on an earlier season race so far this year, and I'm excited to see which ones they decide to do. On the men's side, we've got Rudy Von Berg, who we definitely know will be challenging Joe Skipper for that #1 spot in Nice.
For 2023, my main goal, to put it simply, is to win Ironman Worlds in France.
But he hasn't given us a full race schedule yet, and he's just outside of the top 30 in the PTO. I'm excited to see where he shows up soon enough. Then we've got two big names with Alistair Brownlee, who was supposed to race at South Africa, but we don't know exactly where he's racing next. And then for me, the biggest one is Javier Gomez, who we haven't heard much about since he pulled out of Kona last year. My guess is that he's going to surprise us all and arrive on the start list of PTO Ibiza as well with a wild card, which would just be so epic. So there's still lots of upcoming race schedules and race announcements coming up, which I'll keep you guys all tuned in on. And a good place to get quicker news from me is to head over to Instagram, drop me a follow there. All right, and then we're on to the How They Train podcast from earlier. This week, Sam Long and Dan Plews went on there and cleared up some of the misconceptions that people have had about their training and coaching relationship and what all this low-carb, high-fat diet is all about. And basically, they went through and discussed how they're utilizing a reduction in carbs at certain times of the day and at certain times of their training cycle to improve Sam's fat oxidation, especially for longer distance events such as the Ironman. They also talked about how they're going to try and improve Sam's swimming, which I was really curious about, but it doesn't look like too much is going to be able to be done there other than helping Sam adapt better to the training. But with Sam's baby on the way and a full racing schedule coming up, they believe it would be really difficult to get together and take the right amount of time that he needs to develop his swim. So we'll just have to wait and see how Sam's swim improves and how he adapts to this new training system put in place by Dan Plews. So far, it seems like he's loving it and he's noticing a lot of gains, and he has a much more scientific approach to how he's training. So that's going to be super interesting for me to track throughout the year. And I'm really glad they went on there, as there was a lot of confusion around the subject of this new low carb thing he was doing. But when you listen to the podcast, he isn't really on a low carb diet or keto diet or anything. And coming up this weekend, we've got Ironman 70.3 Geelong as well as Ironman 70.3 Davos. And the Geelong start list looks a bit stronger than the one in the Philippines, with the likes of Stephen McKenna, Mitch Kibbe, Caleb Noble, Mike Phillips, Charlie Quinn, Nicholas Free headlining the start for that race on the men's side, and then Lottie Wilms, Grace Theck, Bradcut Collefelt, and Penny Slater leading there for the women's. We've seen a lot of these guys racing recently on the Southern Hemisphere circuit, so it'll be good to see them race one more time there in Australia. And then at Ironman 70.3 Davos, we don't have too many big names racing on the men's side, but Felipe Acevedo is the one name that stands out there. And on the women's side, we've got Sarah Crowley, Lottie Lucas, and Lauren Brandon, who I think will be going head-to-head there for the win. Okay, and then to wrap things up, I wanted to make mention of a story that I saw on Tri 24/7 that I forgot to mention in last week's episode. but it's that Challenge Barcelona October 8th will have a 76.5 kilometer distance race for the pros, which I think is fascinating as it's another distance to the mix, and then another company is trying out shortening the length of their triathlon races in order to accommodate for TV times and broadcasting, but as well as making it easier on the cities to host the events, as there will be less road closures and such. But this one sounds like a great distance as well, as it becomes even easier for short course athletes to make the jump up to this middle distance racing. It's similar to what Clash is doing right now, and it'll be interesting to see whether this works for Challenge and that's something that they integrate into the future. It's nice that we have a race this distance now in Europe, and I'm sure we'll see quite a few short course athletes try it out this year. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Triathlon Weekly News Roundup. I appreciate you guys coming here every week. As I said earlier, please head over to my Instagram, give me a follow there, send me a message if you want to discuss anything more on here. I am really looking forward to Oceanside coming up. I can't wait to cover that race in more detail. I'm still waiting to see if I'll actually be there in person. So as always, stay tuned to this channel for the future and have a good one. See ya.